Chapter 312. Alright, let's calm down now and assess how much your condition has improved. Despite the significant passage of time, the members were reluctant to let either go. Their pure, joyous embrace had long since morphed into an enforced contact, a conduit through which pent-up anger was unleashed. As either let out a small groan under the grip of their tight embraces, warning him not to even dream of engaging in the dangerous act of fighting monsters alone again, Kishir, who had been leaning against the wall, intervened. But, Commander, do you think either would even tolerate this, if not for the circumstances? You're right. Let us scold him a bit more. The members protested with a sense of regret, but Kishir was a step ahead. Well, if you want to continue, I can't help it. I don't want to miss my turn to scold him either. Let me join in. As Kishir approached with open arms, the members quickly lost their will. Yidhir sighed with relief, finally released from the intense pressure that nearly broke him. Lusan, who had been watching and laughing from a distance, approached to examine Yidhir closely. The venom that had seeped into your skin is rapidly disappearing, and your body temperature is normal. Let's see if you can accept the divine power now. Unwrapping the bandages around Yidhir's limbs, Lusan scrutinized the remaining dark discoloration and infused them with divine power. Until recently, these spots would temporarily disappear when receiving divine power, only to increase again. However, this time was different. As Lusan noticed the spots gradually fading to a normal color without reappearing, a sense of relief and joy appeared on his face. However, while his body was regaining strength relatively quickly, his eyes were not showing much improvement from their initial recovery. In particular, the left eye, where the black stains were most spread, was still unable to distinguish between light and dark. Lusan posited that it was due to this area absorbing the most fluid from Pathomet, and while slow, he believed that it would gradually improve over time. He then infused Yidhir's body with divine power a few more times. In the brief respite as his comrades stepped back to guard the magic spring, Yidhir quietly spoke to Lusan. Priest? So, the depth perception might be different with one eye. It may be more comfortable to keep it covered until it gets better. Yes? Lusan, who had been mumbling, responded belatedly. Yidhir, pointing to Kishir with his eyes, who was not too far away, giving instructions to the members, continued his words. I think I'm fine now. Could you perhaps also check on the commander? The commander? Yes, he looks tired, so please take a look when he returns to his room. Upon hearing this request, Lusan glanced at Kishir with a puzzled look. To him, Kishir seemed no different than usual, but Yidhir thought differently. He believed that Kishir was merely maintaining his calm in front of the others, but was in fact very exhausted. Lusan tilted his head at this, but agreed to examine Kishir discreetly as Yidhir asked. Despite this reassuring answer, Yidhir, who knew Kishir's body was different from ordinary people, couldn't be entirely at ease. Kishir would undoubtedly come to find him tonight. Although they hadn't specifically discussed it, Yidhir was certain Kishir would sneakily come to check on his condition personally once again. I will examine him then. For the first time since regaining his sight, Yidhir walked into the bedroom where he had been staying. He hadn't realized it while he was blind, but the room was much more spacious than he'd thought. This couldn't be a typical mage's bedroom. It was clear that he must have usurped Mikelin's room, or perhaps it was meant for Kishir. By the bed, which was positioned opposite the window, he could see a basin and a water towel, along with a nicely wrapped bag for room heating. Items that had now become useless. His gaze scanning the furniture, not luxurious, yet equipped with everything necessary, stopped at a table and chair not far away. It was the very spot where Kishir had moved him several times to feed him. Yudir approached and gently stroked the back of the chair. The fact that he and Kishir had sat on this old wooden chair didn't feel real. He carefully settled himself on the chair. The part that touched his back was extremely hard. As he closed his eyes and looked down at the empty table, his senses were subtly stimulated, evoking a curious familiarity different from moments ago. The smell of dry dust, the deep scent of grass from the forest flowing in through the window gap, the slight creak of the table due to a slightly misaligned leg, and the faint traces of a cool, stale body odor embedded in the chair. Yudir opened his eyes again. The faint traces he thought he had sensed vanished in an instant. What am I doing? Later, he looked at himself in a mirror for the first time since recovering his sight. Even though some of the stains had faded, the remaining traces on his body were unsightly at best. He hadn't realized it when he couldn't see, but his forehead, the whites of his eyes, his neck, and the back of his hands were all splotchy, like a person stricken with a plague. His colleagues and Kishir, who hadn't shown any expression even after seeing him in worse condition, suddenly seemed formidable. Not to mention, Kishir hadn't said a word even when he impulsively kissed him. The light violet spots originally on his right hand were now concealed among the black stains, but Yudir guessed they were probably not completely gone. It was due to the red light that had flowed from the back of his hand when he used the medium. Why didn't the power simply amplify as it did when Alec used it, but red light flowed out instead? The medium he pulled out again was now transparent and faint black, as opposed to the deep burgundy it had been before. He infused it with power again, hoping against hope, but there was no change. Yudir put the medium on the table and lifted his hand again. When he tried to use a tiny bit of water power, a thin stream of water spiraled around his finger before abruptly breaking off and falling. Recovery seems to be happening, but this is not much different from before using the medium. There was only one conclusion he could draw from his attempts. Just as the redstone's power from my body absorbed the energy in Kishir's body, this time I think I used the redstone's power enclosed in the medium. The medium was a tool made by utilizing the principle of magic tools, which could automatically cast a specified magic if fueled with magic power. Thias took advantage of the fact that magic power could be inserted into a medium for magic tools and created a new sturdy medium to confine the power of the redstone. It was a medium where nothing would happen even if power was infused because there was no magic to output originally. However, due to the peculiarity of the redstone's energy, it showed a behavior of amplifying the power considerably and releasing it when infused with an awakener's power. Yudir had once conjectured that his body might have become a living medium for the power of the redstone, given his unique characteristics. If that is the case, the event that transpired was an instance of two mediums simultaneously unleashing their power. Hence, the reaction differed from other times when others used their power. It might be an extension of the same phenomenon. The sensation that it wasn't the amplification of the infused power, but the pure energy within the medium itself being drawn out and connected to his hand lingered faintly in his body. Yudir looked down at his empty hand, clenching and unclenching his fist. As he attempted to consciously summon the redstone power, it did not reappear. It seemed as though the power only manifested when Yudir was desperate or only half in his right mind. Nevertheless, Seeing that the medium became transparent, it seems certain that the power contained within has disappeared. Fortunately, everything that had transpired that day occurred in the forest under the cover of night. Even if the mages had seen what Ydir had done, they would not be able to accurately guess the truth. The identity of the medium and the power of the red stone were matters that must remain secret for the time being. But what happened with the Magic Spring ruins? Ydir recalled the voice that had whispered to him to hold back his hand and not forcefully suppress the ground. As he followed those words and did not resist the movement of the earth, but instead moved as though gently coaxing and soothing it, the earthquake soon subsided. Kishir had said it was due to the long accumulated magic power disappearing. Ydir remembered Kishir speaking as if he was expecting some sort of change to occur around the ruins and the Great Serene Forest after the magic power was exhausted from casting a gigantic spell. However, he had not at all anticipated that this change would be an earthquake. If the exhaustion of the magic power accumulated in the magic spring caused the earthquake, perhaps the balance had been broken again. The talks about balance that Luzon and Kishir had speculated upon each for their own reasons simultaneously came to Ydir's mind. Luzon speculated that the imbalance of the massive power at the Magic Spring ruins could have caused the appearance of the monsters, and Kishir said the cause of the abnormal growth of the Great Serene Forest, including the cracks, could be the same. If that was true, he began to worry terribly at the thought that the earthquake that occurred today might lead to the appearance of more cracks or abnormal behaviors in the monsters. Just as Ydir was beginning to consider whether or not to leave this place, a sound was heard, tapping against the window. Despite being on the second floor, Kishir, with his calm face, was jokingly smiling outside the window. "May I come in?" He had expected a visit, but not through the window. With an indescribable feeling, Ydir opened the closed door. "What are you doing? Why didn't you come through the door?" I was curious about the feeling of having someone answer when I knock. Ydir was speechless at the sly response. After closing the window and looking around, he let out a small sigh. "So, did you find it amusing?" The answer he received was an embrace.